Okay, kid, show me what you got. Yeah, right. Next! Yes! Next!
Ooh, scary.
Next! 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 Next!
Final Fantasy III. Do you have what it takes? Final Fantasy III from Squaresoft.
Next!
That was the first commercial I ever saw for a Final Fantasy game, and my first time hearing about Final Fantasy III, which of course is actually number 6 in Japan. This would be my second game in the series, and as a kid, I was pretty damn excited to play this. I loved 4! With its great soundtrack, characters, and battle system, I was nothing but pumped. I was super excited to walk into the video store one day and finally see that SNES box with the Moogle staring back at me. And one day, I finally managed to get a hold of it. And boy, was I terrible at it. Which in hindsight, that should tell you how bad at RPGs I was as a kid. Final Fantasy VI came out in 1994, and this is the last game on the Super Nintendo. It's also the last time that a numbered game in the series, after years excluded, would be entirely 2D, as Final Fantasy VII onwards would enter 3D. For a lot of people, this is the end of an era. And oh man, growing up I knew tons of people in high school who considered this the best game in the series. Even to this day, I still know people who swear by it and say that nothing will ever be this good again. And I will agree to a certain extent, this is the best RPG on the Super Nintendo. Hey, I like Chrono Trigger too, I love me some Mario RPG, but this game is a different kind of special. I had never seen an SNES game with such great visuals, such great music, and some of the best written characters on any other RPG on this system. Square absolutely has an amazing achievement under their belts with this game, and I'm gonna do my best to explain why. If you've never played this game before, I would recommend stopping the video now. My Clement Remembers Final Fantasy series is all about spoilers. It's about me reacting to some of the best moments, twists, revelations in these games, and 6 is a game that is absolutely held up by how amazing the story is. I don't want to ruin genuine surprises for you, so please, if you're interested, you have been warned. That being said, let's discuss Final Fantasy VI. Our story begins in a world that has recovered from a devastating war known as the War of the Magi, a war between magical beings known as Espers and the people who extracted magic from them. After the war's end, the destructive force known as magic was erased from humanity. Generations later, people have embraced new steampunk technology, and an oppressive empire led by a man named Gestal is in power, trying to conquer and dominate the rest of the world. The Empire hopes to rediscover the gift of magic so that it may enforce its complete authority. We start off as a young girl named Terra, a mysterious woman who has the ability to cast magic herself, but is being manipulated by the Empire through a brainwashing slave crown. She's being taken to the neutral village of Narsh, where reports of an Esper sighting have just surfaced. Upon arriving and attacking any villager that dares step in their way, they eventually find the Esper, and things don't quite go as planned. The two soldiers, Biggs and Wedge, get obliterated, and Terra finds herself blacking out and waking up in a bed with the slave crown finally off. Unfortunately, she's now suffering from amnesia. Aside from flashbacks of massacring Imperial soldiers under the orders of a man named Kefka, she can't remember anything. Terra's been saved by a man who's helping a resistance group known as the Returners, a ragtag rebellion force that's looking to stop the Empire at all costs and return the world back to a peaceful time. The man enlists help from Locke, a master thief, a master treasure hunter who promises to protect Terra at all costs. With the Empire hot on Terra's trail, Locke escorts Terra away from danger and takes her to the Kingdom of Figaro, where she gets acquainted with its king, Edgar. And later they run into his twin brother, a martial artist named Sabin, who wanted nothing to do with the throne. Eventually they reach the Returners' headquarters. The Returners are blunt. Terra is the key to winning this war. Her ability to use magic is an advantage for them, and a threat if used by the Empire. With no answers about her past, Terra agrees, acknowledging that the Empire is bad news, and maybe she'll find her answers this way. And that's the setup of Final Fantasy VI. This game is still so precious to me. The game does a fantastic job telling its story. When the game boots up and you see Terra, Biggs, and Wedge heading to Narsh in their Magitech armor, I mean, that's a cool image, man. The music combined with these walkers will be burned into my brain forever. Magitech armors are tools used by the Empire, and they're just so friggin' cool. Walking death tanks that shoot beams of energy, and you actually get to ride around in them on occasion too. Hell, at one point, I got to fight a squad of Magitech soldiers while in Magitech armor. Hell yeah! These walkers are an iconic part of Final Fantasy VI, so much so that they end up reappearing in other Final Fantasy games later. In fact, so do Biggs and Wedge. Not these two characters specifically, but in 7 onwards they usually introduce 2 characters who are friends or colleagues that happen to have these exact names. It's a nice nod to the Star Wars franchise, as 2 of the pilots Luke Skywalker flew with in the Death Star battle were Biggs and Wedge. Although in the SNES version, Biggs is called Vix. You ruined the reference, Ted Woolsey! Between them, the Magitech Walkers, and our good buddy Golbez from Final Fantasy IV, I think it's safe to say that Final Fantasy takes a lot of inspiration from Star Wars.
Too short for a stormtrooper?
Huh? Oh, the uniform. I'm Luke Skywalker. I'm here to rescue you.
Another thing I like about Final Fantasy VI are the great visuals. In the last 5 games, all of the character and NPC sprites were tiny and didn't really reflect what their appearance was like in the battles. Now this time, everyone looks like a battle sprite. This style is just perfect. This is Final Fantasy to me. The backgrounds when you actually are in battles are exquisite and beautiful. Hell, the overworld battle map where you're just fighting in the green grassy fields, it looks like a painting. A beautifully crafted painting where these sprites just happen to be killing rabbits in. Deadly, deadly rabbits, take my word for it. Then I battle in the forest, and look how gorgeous this is! I also made a mistake last time. I am remembering this series after all, and I completely got it wrong in my Final Fantasy V video. There are animated backgrounds in Final Fantasy VI. I was just remembering the key important battles, which all have a static background, but there's plenty of situations that feel alive. That's what I get for assuming. Final Fantasy VI pushes the Super Nintendo to its limits and gets away with so much. It even incorporates Mode 7 whenever you're flying around in an airship, or when you're riding a chocobo around on the world map. I do think this looks pretty dated though, and I'm super thankful that the world map shows up in the bottom corner of the screen, highlighting all the towns and locations with white dots. Because when you're in Mode 7, everything gets super flat and super foggy, and it's pretty disorienting trying to figure out where you are in relation to everything else. This is something the 3D games pull off much better. But that's like the only misstep. The game looks great, far above what Final Fantasies 4 and 5 offered, and it still stands the test of time, giving us an iconic style that tons of RPGs would be more than happy to emulate. Now let's get to the meat and potatoes, the gameplay. Final Fantasy VI is still using the active time battle system from 4. In fact, you should probably just expect that from now on until I say otherwise. We don't have a job system, and because of the way the story is structured, we will be playing as very specific characters with very specific class types. Sabin's the monk, Strago's the blue mage, Cyan's the samurai, Locke is the thief, treasure hunter. They all have different equipment that they can use, they all have different stats when it comes to agility and strength, and many times in the story you will be forced to use certain characters even if you don't want to. At least mostly in the early game you will. Final Fantasy VI has the key distinction of having the most party members ever in one of these games. By endgame, it's possible to have 14 different people that you can choose to use in your party if you so desire. While yes, sometimes they will be adamant that Celeste has to join the party or you need to play as Sabin for this one particular moment, when you eventually gain enough party members and reach a certain point in the game, you're going to be able to customize the party with whichever people that you want. And you're not forced to bring Terra along because we started the game with her. In fact, I almost hesitate to call Terra the main character of the story. Quite often she will be absent from the party and can actually be left out of the plot when you go to the final boss. More on that later. While Final Fantasy VI shares the party member system of Final Fantasy IV, at least this time we have a little more freedom in who we choose to bring to battles. If some players decide that the Jungle Boy Gao's playstyle just isn't for them, then they can leave him behind and never use him. Like me, because he sucks. I don't like the way Gao handles, but I do at least appreciate the fact that he's such a unique character. Final Fantasy VI does a lot of unique things with character abilities and does a pretty good job making each party member stand out and be a viable option in battles. Cyan, for example, has Sword Tech. When you use this ability, a timed bar will pass along 8 numbers. You're supposed to push the button again when it reaches the number you want to use. The longer you wait, the more devastating the attack is likely to be. You give the enemy time to attack your party, but Cyan will more than make up for the wait with devastating dispatches, deadly counters, and quadruple slashing devastation. Sabin the Monk has a whole bunch of blitz moves where he unleashes various martial arts techniques, but there's a catch with this. Instead of just selecting abilities to use, you actually have to input a button combination to successfully perform them. For example, in order to pummel foes, you need to activate Blitz, then push right, left, right on the control pad and confirm with the A button to register the attack. They made Sabin's method of using attacks like it was a game of Street Fighter or something. And it is definitely easy to screw up. Not only do you have to memorize the commands from Sabin's Blitz menu, you gotta make sure you don't push any additional buttons. Take your time putting them in, basically. And pro tip, when it tells you to push the control pad diagonally, just push one of the directions only. If it says to move down left, don't actually do that. Push down or left by themselves and move on to the next motion. Now you can suplex Magitech armors like a champ. And trains. Yeah, Sabin's kinda ridiculous. The guy can shoot Kamehameha blasts out of his hands, and he can suplex giant trains. The dude can literally hold up a crumbling house all by himself. Sabin might be the most powerful monk the series has ever seen. Again, each character has their quirks. Gao's a berserker type who can learn new berserker styles from monsters he battles in the Veldt. The Veldt is where he's from, and it's a peculiar location on the world map because none of the enemies give you experience there. So by forcing Gao to run off after meeting new enemies, he learns how to fight like those enemies. It's not quite blue magic, but it's similar, you know? And every time you run into new monsters elsewhere, they usually show up to the Veldt afterwards so Gao can take advantage. Personally, I wish Gao learned abilities regardless where he was, and not just the Veldt. And because I have no control over what he does when he imitates certain monsters, I can't use him for healing items or the like. I'm sure some people in the comments love using him, but you're wrong. If you want to steal things, you use Lock. Celeste can use her runic ability to absorb any magical attacks, regardless who it's aimed at. Strago has blue magic, so he'll learn enemy abilities as they happen, which is way more useful to me than Gao. But the OP party member, in my opinion, was always Edgar. The King of Figaro is an engineer who has access to a variety of tools that he can use infinitely as they don't have ammo or MP. Right off the bat, he starts off with auto crossbow. In the early game, this attack is fairly powerful, it hits every enemy on screen, and it never misses. That move can carry you through a good chunk of the game. And then eventually he gets the drill. The drill is a super powerful attack that only hits one target, but it pierces past defense, guaranteeing decent damage. Like the crossbow, it never misses. Being able to spam auto crossbow and drill the entire game, I never used his basic attack, and he was just murdering everything. Oh man, this boss's defense is really good. Drill. Oh no, we're fighting multiple foes. Crossbow. They even introduce a new enemy type in Final Fantasy VI that will become a popular mainstay of the series, the Cactuar. Fun thing about the Cactuar is that it gives a lot of money when you kill it, but its agility is through the roof and it dodges most attacks. And every time you keep missing, it just pelts you with thousands upon thousands of needles, which will drain your health real quick. Trying to kill it is a major hassle. Unless you got Edgar. High agility or no, Edgar's drill pierces all. One thing that will feel really alien and different at first is the fact that there are no magic shops in towns, and only 2 people have access to magic at the beginning of the game. Terra, and a magic knight who betrayed the Empire, Celeste. They're the only ones who can cast fire, ice, or cure magic. This means for the most part you'll have to rely on healing items, and only if they're in the party will you be exploiting elemental weaknesses or casting group healing spells. And when you find yourselves in a gauntlet fighting enemy after enemy, you better hope you brought a lot of backup items. But it doesn't stay this way forever. After the Returners base gets compromised by the Empire, everyone goes their separate ways and regroups back at Narsh, where Terra found the Esper. And the Empire's back at it, trying once again to claim it with a full force, and their General Kefka leading the way, proclaiming that everyone in Narsh is expendable and to kill the lot of them. After an intense battle, our heroes manage to stop the invasion, and Kefka retreats to live another day. But when Terra approaches the Esper for a second time, exposure to the creature affects her and triggers a transformation. Terra transforms into a pink beast and goes into a complete berserker rage, gaining the power of flight and blasts away from the scene, scared and confused. She even manages to crash into a random village's house before ending up in the city of Zozo. Following the trail, everyone finds Terra unconscious, but now in the care of a bearded man named Ramu. Yep, that name should sound familiar because Ramu has been a summon in every game since 3. Ramu reveals that he is in fact an Esper, that long ago the War of the Magi happened, and afterwards Espers locked themselves away in a sealed location to stay away from the humans who treated them so badly. Generations passed before one day an Esper named Maduin discovered a wounded human girl inside of the Esper world. This woman, Madonna, was nursed back to health and grew a friendship with her savior, despite the fact that Maduin previously thought all humans to be greedy, selfish creatures with no redeeming qualities. After a time, when Madonna was set to leave and return to the human world, Maduin convinced her to stay. The two were in love. And I guess Espers and humans are compatible when it comes to sex, because they make sweet, beautiful love and give birth to our green-haired protagonist. Terra is half human and half Esper, which explains why she was born with magic and her bestial form. And as soon as she rejoins the party, she now has the option to morph into her Esper form to boost her attack power for a limited amount of time. As a kid, I remember feeling very funny when Terra became an Esper. This girl I was rooting for transformed. All of a sudden she was pink, and she wasn't wearing any clothes. Her hair's out and she's naked and, I don't know what I'm feeling right now. I was hitting puberty. Terra made me feel funny. Wait, why am I admitting this in the video? Anywho, unfortunately, Maduin and Madonna's love didn't last long, because soon after Terra's birth, Gestalt and his Imperial soldiers discovered the Esper world's location and started ransacking the place and abducting every Esper that they saw. Gestalt only sees them as tools to discover the power of magic. In order to save the rest of the Espers, they set up a force field to propel the Empire out and seal away the Esper world for good. Unfortunately, Madonna headed to the entrance with Terra in hand, and Maduin followed chase. The two were sucked out and blocked from returning. A wounded Maduin was stolen for experimentation, and Gestalt came to discover our half-Esper hero. Madonna died, and Terra spent the rest of her life as a slave for the Empire, to use as they saw fit. Ramu then explains that when Espers die, they become fossilized crystals known as magicite. And only through these crystals can humans take advantage of the magical properties that they have. So it's at this point we find our first group of summons, because even though they're dead, you can still call them momentarily to wreak havoc on your foes. But more importantly, it's where the rest of the party gains access to magic. By equipping magicite in the game, you'll gain ability points when you win battles. And depending on the summon you're carrying, you might learn Cure, Fire, Ice, the Ultima spell. Essentially, this makes it so Terra and Celeste are not the only magic users. Now, anybody in your party can learn whatever spell you want. Hell, they can learn every spell, so no one's limited to a Black Mage, White Mage, Time Mage restriction. Once a character learned a particular spell from a magicite, they can unequip that magicite and still have the spell whenever they want. But another great bonus about the Espers was that some of them have added bonuses, where Bismarck, for example, will increase your strength by 2 every time you level up with him in your possession. So you could actually manipulate character stats, where if someone wasn't a great warrior class, if they didn't have high physical strength, you'd give them Bismarck and have them level up with Bismarck the rest of the game until their strength got really, really good. So there was a lot of creative stat managing you could do with this system. And this game has a shitload of Magicite. This introduced a ton of new Espers / summons into the Final Fantasy universe, such as the gigantic robot behemoth thing that shoots lasers, Alexander. We're going to be seeing this thing in a lot of future Final Fantasies, holy crap. You can summon a cat named Kate Sith to show up and help the party. And you know, I just recently played through World of Final Fantasy, and now I've noticed that the Zone Seeker summon actually looks like one of the villains in World of Final Fantasy, which I never would have caught on had I not replayed FF6 just now. So, I didn't know that's what they were going for. I won't lie, jumping from Final Fantasy V to Final Fantasy VI is major whiplash. I went from one of the hardest games in the series to one of the easier ones. Thanks to Edgar being OP with his tools, thanks to everyone having access to the best magic spells, thanks to the experience enemies dropping in battles, leveling up my characters nice and fast, I found myself coasting through this game rather nicely. It also helps that the relic system is so useful as well. Along with normal equipment, characters can equip 2 accessories to make the experience go much smoother. Things that double your attack strength, things that make you cast auto haste on yourself, ribbons to eliminate all status effects, and experience eggs to double your leveling and make the journey to Beefcake even faster. I'll be honest, I didn't struggle with much of anything in this game. When I was a kid, I remember this game being so much harder. There was a lot I struggled with when I was like 7 years old, but now that I'm 29, oh boy, even the legendary dragons that show up later made me go, that's it? Really? If you're looking for an easy game, which would make this a fine starting point, then yeah, I would definitely recommend Final Fantasy VI. To be honest, I don't have too much to cover when it comes to the core gameplay. It isn't a drastic departure from the rest of the series, and the only things of note that make it stand out are the Magicite and all of the different abilities each character has. For the most part, what makes Final Fantasy VI such a standout incredible game is all in its story, atmosphere, and the various little secrets that kept me and my friends talking about this game for a long time. Firstly, it has a really compelling villain. Of course there is the Empire, with its stormtroopers raiding around in Magitech armor, led by an enigmatic old emperor who loves giving speeches and having rallies, and seeing the Empire give off that one-arm salute certainly invokes similarities to Nazi Germany. I mean, the plot is literally about these guys hunting down and rounding up Espers, and throwing them into their twisted Magitech research facilities, where the Espers are mistreated, stuffed into glass tubes, and drained of their magical essence to feed their Magitech technology. All thanks to their head scientist, a man wearing a yellow banana raincoat named Sid. No, seriously, what the hell is he wearing? It is mentioned many times that not everyone in the Empire is evil. Some soldiers are just scared folk who dare not oppose, and some, like Sid, truly have no idea just how evil the Emperor truly is. Although I find it hard to believe that Sid didn't realize what the hell he was doing. You were experimenting on scared, traumatized Espers. Kefka straight up beats the shit out of Ifrit and Shiva just because he can. You thought nothing was off about this, Sid? Seriously? The Empire is out for pure world domination, enforcing their will on Esper and humans alike as they destroy villages, assassinate royalty, and engage in all kinds of horrible torture. The first time we meet Celeste in the game, she is literally getting punched in the face repeatedly by some Imperial asshole. With all of the horrible shit they do, it's very clear why they're the bad guys, and you grow to hate them quite well. Although surprisingly, Emperor Gestalt isn't really the main focus of the game, and he actually only shows up for 3 or 4 scenes of the whole entire adventure. No, the real spotlight belongs to one of the generals, a crazy sadistic clown known as Kefka. He's the character that our heroes run into quite often, and he might be the most evil Final Fantasy villain the series has ever had. Not much is known about his past. It's briefly mentioned by an NPC that Kefka was one of the first to undergo Sid's Magitech infusions, but because it was all experimental and hadn't been perfected yet, Sid inadvertently snapped Kefka's mind in 2 that day, and the guy went fucking bonkers. Why Emperor Gestalt didn't just kill him right then and there, I'll never know. But ever since, Kefka gained a taste of pain and misery and loved to enforce his brand of evil sadism. If there's ever a worst-case scenario, Kefka is likely to pick it. Lord Kefka, there are civilians here!
Exterminate everyone!
Some of our people are prisoners in the castle. If we poison the river...
Do it! Take them all out!
Kefka has no regard for human life and practically gets off on killing people. And yeah, you read that scene right. Kefka at one point decides that in order to punish a kingdom that helped out the returners, he poisons the entire river that they drink from and kills everyone there. When Edgar refuses to give up Terra after he storms in trying to find her, he sets the castle on fire, happily welcoming the king to his new barbecue. When Kefka has fun, oh, you hear it. He actually has an iconic laugh sound effect that fans of the game will know all too well. Despite his evil, Kefka is a really quirky character. Everyone in the Empire hates the guy. He's literally the kind of guy who makes soldiers remove the sand from his shoes when they're walking in a desert. He hates when things don't go his way. And I mean hate. What I find fascinating about him compared to other villains in the series is that he's not a super powerful god. He's not the ultimate warrior of evil that everyone should fear, like a Golbez or an Exdeath. On 2 separate occasions, you face off with Kefka, and he ultimately decides to run away. Wait, he says. Do I look like a waiter? Kefka's the kind of villain that you love to hate, and whenever his theme song comes on, you know something bad's about to go down. Ultimately, Gestahl and Kefka are looking for the source of all magic, something not located in the blood of an Esper. They seek the 3 legendary statues, constructs of immense power that are the source of all magic on the planet. Crafted by the gods, these figures have the power to completely reshape the world as they see fit. And something like that being in the Empire's hands is bad news. Eventually, though, the bad guys do manage to discover the location of the statues, and they manage to awaken their resting place, causing an entire chunk of the planet to levitate above the sky. But our heroes are hot on their trail. Using an airship they acquired, they fly over to the floating continent for one last showdown with the Emperor. Before I move on with what happens next, I think it's important to talk about the characters, and specifically, just how dark this game tends to be. Final Fantasy VI might be the saddest and darkest game in the series. I mean, if you thought Final Fantasy II's bleakness about war was a little heavy, this game is like 1,000 gut punches. For a game that has such a gigantic cast, I can honestly say that almost every character is incredibly well defined, each with unique personalities and motivations that drive the characters forward. Terra is a character with no identity. Stolen by the Empire as a baby, she's struggling to understand who she really is. Even basic concepts like love elude her, and she feels empty because she doesn't know how to fit in with other people. When we first meet our treasure hunter Locke, he does seem to be a pretty proactive rebel who's always looking out for others. He promises both Terra and Celeste that he'll look after them no matter what. But hints from Edgar suggest that Locke is doing something really unhealthy. And sure enough, when our heroes journey to the village of Kolingen, we discover that Locke once had a girlfriend named Rachel. When exploring a cave, Rachel ended up falling from a collapsed bridge and suffered heavy injuries. She also got amnesia, completely forgetting who Locke was. Sent away by her father, Locke wasn't around to protect Rachel when the Empire invaded. They killed her. But before they did, Rachel had just remembered Locke. Upon hearing this, Locke goes into complete denial. He actually took Rachel's corpse to a particular botanist, hoping to preserve her body until they found a way to bring her back from the dead. He's literally paying for her body to stay in suspended animation in a house somewhere. He can't accept that she's gone, and as some kind of coping mechanism, he becomes overprotective of women under his care, forming a bond with Celeste through his trauma. Edgar and Sabin were the princes of Figaro, until an Imperial assassin poisoned their father, the king, forcing the 2 brothers to take initiative and claim the throne. But who would take it? Sabin was frustrated, having to become a king that bends over backwards for his father's murderers? He would rather die. And Edgar wasn't really interested in having any kind of power. He just wanted to live out his days, hitting on women in bars and enjoying his Lothario lifestyle. But finally, a crucial moment came when Edgar decides that they'll flip a coin to determine what they'll do next. They'll go their own way if it's heads, or they'll stay behind and do what's expected if it's tails. Edgar flips the coin, and it's heads. Sabin goes off to train as a martial artist, and Edgar reluctantly claims the throne to keep the kingdom together. But what's interesting here is that Edgar didn't actually leave it up to chance. He had a double-sided coin. He knew when he flipped it that the coin was going to land heads and Sabin was going to be free. He actually sacrificed his own freedom, forcing himself to take care of the kingdom just so his brother would be happy. Fuck, man. Our heroes meet a man named Setzer, a man who has access to his own personal airship, the Blackjack, and that's where we get our airship of the game. Setzer used to engage in races with his airship, competing with his favorite rival, a woman named Daryl. They loved each other, they loved racing, and one day they decided to race around the world and meet at a special finish spot. But when Setzer arrived, she didn't show up. Her airship crashed, and she had died. And since then, Setzer lost his drive, and didn't really care what the Empire did until Celeste and her friends showed up in his life. And then, we come to Cyan. Remember how Kefka poisoned a kingdom as revenge for helping the Returners? That was Doma, which Cyan happily served as the top soldier. And he was one of the few people not to drink any water around that time. He lost his men, he lost his king, and worst of all, he lost his family. There is a dark, gripping scene where you enter Cyan's bedroom and he finds his wife has drank the poison. And then when he goes over to his son in the bed, he pulls his body out and finds that he too has died. His son is dead. There is a dead child on screen right now in this Super Nintendo game. Holy shit. Cyan goes into a berserker rage, declaring war on the Empire, and this is how he meets up with Sabin. Not long after, the characters end up going into the Phantom Forest where the Phantom Train resides. The Phantom Train carries the dead in spirit form from Earth to the afterlife. Our heroes accidentally stumble into it, nearly getting consumed by a whole bunch of ghosts, but they do manage to escape and catch a glimpse of the train's next passengers. Cyan sees his family. He literally sees them going to the afterlife before his very eyes. And it gets even worse when later a side quest opens up about Cyan trying to let go of his past. You have to relive his happiest moments, knowing full well what Cyan has lost. And I can just keep going on. About how Shadow was assumed to be this merciless killer. That's Shadow! He'd slit his own mama's throat for a nickel! And yet, once upon a time, Shadow was just a thief who couldn't even put his partner out of his misery. Oh, and that's cute, Final Fantasy. A thief who turned into a ninja? I see what you did there. The Jungle Boy Gao? He lives in the wild because he was abandoned as a boy. There's even a subplot here where Gao tries to reconnect with his father, and it doesn't work out. There's a lot of sadness and baggage here that make each character feel like they're overcoming something. I never thought about it that much as a kid, but man, for a Super Nintendo game, this thing really goes places. I haven't even talked about Celeste's moment coming up yet. But I don't want newcomers to think that Final Fantasy VI is nothing but doom and gloom. Far from it. The game still tries to sprinkle in a lot of comic relief the way they did with Final Fantasy V. Not to the same extent, but they still try to have silly NPCs, over-the-top reactions, and pretty out-there situations like when a whole bunch of Moogles arrive to help Locke and Terra escape from the Narsh mines. Yeah, you get to play as a whole bunch of Moogles at one point. It's pretty freaking awesome. One actually joins the party because Ramuh told him to. So yeah, Mog the Moogle. First time a Moogle has been a party member in the series. I would say Locke, Terra, and Edgar have pretty sad backstories, but it's not like they're above a silly joke where Terra winks at them and the two swoon like idiots. The game's still fun, and it also helps to have incredible music by Nobuo Uematsu. Jesus, what he accomplishes with this game is on a whole nother level. For the first time in the series, he gives each character their own definitive theme song. He is delivering music that wouldn't feel out of place in a big budget movie. It's amazing. And if you're gonna talk music, it's impossible not to talk about the opera scene. So our heroes need to reach the Empire's main continent, but they need an airship to do so. The only person who's got one is Setzer, and he's expected to show up to this opera house and kidnap the lead actress playing Maria. This gives Locke the idea to volunteer Celeste to take over for the regular actress and be Maria herself. With no other options, Celeste reluctantly agrees, and in gameplay, you the player actually have to memorize her lines and say the correct options when she goes out to perform. You also need to navigate the stage correctly and follow your co-star's lead when they enter the scene. But this moment, what a wonderful, amazing, super unique experience that I will never forget. You actually get to watch a tiny condensed play while Nobuo's music works its wonders, and then a recurring comic relief character shows up to ruin the day. At one point our heroes run into this weird squid named Ultros who has a bone to pick for no real reason. Seriously, he's never even met Locke or Celeste at this point, so why he's going out of his way to sabotage the play, I don't know, he's weird. I'd say Ultros is kind of the Gilgamesh of Final Fantasy VI, since he's so humorous and his boss fights escalate with each appearance. He even brings in a buddy named Typhon to fly him over to your airship and battle you there. Ultros is a bit of a fan favorite character though, and because of this, he does make other appearances in future Final Fantasy games. To me, the sadness is punctuated by all of the moments of joy and adventure that Final Fantasy VI has to offer. You're never stuck thinking about the misery because the gameplay is so fun, the music's so intense, and for the most part, the character's so enjoyable. So now that I got all of that out of the way, it's time to get to the finale. On the floating continent, our heroes are too late. Kefka and Gestalt make it to the three statues, which again are the source of all magic and have the power to reshape the world. The Emperor has world domination at his fingertips. Using the statue's power, it restrains our heroes, and Celeste is given a choice to return to the Empire. If she kills her friends, they will overlook her treachery. Celeste shoves the sword back in Kefka's face, or gut, or wherever she stabbed him, and the clown goes berserk. He decides to tamper with the statues and gain ultimate power. This displeases Gestalt as he doesn't want to destroy the world, merely conquer it. But it's too late. Kefka has the power. Surrounded by the statues, he's practically invincible. He just straight up kills the Emperor, throwing his body off the edge and proclaiming the world his. He starts rearranging the statues, which is absolutely not good for the planet. Shadow tries to hold them off while the heroes run away and get back onto the airship. The floating continent is unstable, and Kefka's tampering fucks everything up. Entire continents get shifted, numerous innocent people suffer and die, even Setzer's airship is torn asunder, splitting the party up while the entire world burns. Our heroes have failed. The world is now in ruin. Yeah. When we cut back after this event, an entire year has passed. Kefka has destroyed the world. Not completely. The villages are very much still intact, lots of humanity is still hanging in there, but the world has never been in a worse state. The continents are all rearranged, animals and plants are dying, the water is filthy, and Kefka is still in control. He's assembled a big fuck-off tower in the center of the world where he rules with an iron fist. Using the statues, he can unleash the Light of Judgment, a laser beam that he can fire from the tower to obliterate any town that dare oppose him. A laser beam that has already claimed its fair share of casualties. Most have given up hope. Even people who hated the now dead Gestalt Empire fondly look back on those days now that the world is worse off. Everything is just awful. When we first begin, though, we take the role of Celeste, who has been in a coma for the past year and is only now waking up. She's been looked after by Sid. Together they're stranded on a solitary island where food is in short supply. Celeste doesn't know if her friends are even still alive. But she makes the most of the situation, bonding with the man who gave her magical powers. The closest thing to family Celeste has ever had, she considers him her grandfather. And oh boy, this upcoming section. Taking care of Celeste all this time has taken its toll on Sid, and he's extremely sick and needs healthy food if he's to go on. This leads to a gameplay segment where we have to go to the nearby beach and collect healthy fish to feed Sid and keep him going. And at this point, the player deliberately goes through a rather repetitive motion. We go to the beach, we grab a fish, we return to Sid, who upon entering the house is getting up from his table and going to the bed to rest. We feed him the fish and proceed to collect another. Rinse, repeat over and over again until Sid gets better. And this task starts to become embedded into your brain. You get a fish, go to the house, Sid gets up from his table and goes to his bed. You get another fish, go to the house, Sid leaves the table and goes to the bed. You go to the house, Sid leaves the table and goes to the bed. Enter house, Sid leaves the table and goes to the bed. Sid leaves the table and goes to the bed. Sid leaves the table and goes to the bed. Sid leaves the table and goes to the bed. Sid leaves the... He's already on the bed. When I played this, my brain snapped. Right then and there, I knew something's wrong. Sure enough, when Celeste approaches and tries to feed the fish to Sid, there's no response. He lies there, vacantly staring at the ceiling. Sid is dead. This is a dead body. Sid is dead. Fucking Christ. I want to remind people, I was 7 years old when I played this game. This haunted me, fucking shook me up, and knowing that Celeste lost him and was all alone just made me feel awful. And yet, the scene keeps going. Celeste climbs a cliff located on the island. There, she finds a dead bird. Another dead thing in this dead world where she is completely alone. Celeste feels complete hopelessness, and she makes a decision. A decision I never thought I would see in a Super Nintendo game. Celeste gives up. She approaches the edge of the cliff, and she jumps. With tears in her eyes, Celeste commits suicide. She kills herself. Even in 2017, having played this game before, I was still taken aback by this scene. I mentioned before in the Final Fantasy IV video that Final Fantasy showed me that stories could be told through video games, that not everything was a jumpy platformer, a puzzle game, not every video game was about getting the high score or saving the princess. They have just as much opportunity to move people with complex characters, movie-quality music, and can tell a story just as well as any book or movie. 6 has a depth to it that goes beyond what you expect when you jump into the game. It lures you in with fun, energetic characters, a great twisted villain, imagery that'll never leave your head no matter how many years have passed, and then it gut punches you with some of the saddest material. And any game that can make me feel emotions like this has done a masterclass job, especially because this is the Super Nintendo and they're limited storytelling-wise. I love this game, man. I love this game. This game is such an achievement. Now don't worry, Celeste did not actually die. She attempted, but ended up surviving the fall, and when she wakes up, she sees another bird. This time, a living one, and one that happens to be wearing a bandana that belongs to the man she loves. Locke is alive. If Locke is alive, maybe Tara's alive, maybe Edgar's alive. Celeste realizes that as bleak as everything is, there's still one last strand of hope left. When she re-enters Sid's room, she manages to find a letter that he wrote before he passed. It turns out Sid has been working on a raft to leave the island in his spare time. Well, that's fucking convenient, thank God. Celeste washes back to the mainland, discovering Kefka's horrible new world, but she does find her friends. She manages to find Sabin, she manages to find Edgar, and then eventually Setzer. Like Celeste, Setzer initially thought that life was hopeless, but seeing his friends return, he figures, what the hell. He remembers that his old friend Daryl's airship was buried in Daryl's tomb, and with the Blackjack destroyed, this is their only way to find more friends. So they go through a dungeon filled with monsters. Hey, if I died, I'd want a tomb like that. And this, folks, is where the game turns around. This was the World of Ruins overworld theme prior to this moment. But as soon as the heroes find Daryl's airship, the Falcon, this is the theme that replaces the overworld theme and never goes away even when you're flying around. This song is hope. This is why I covered all of the characters' tragic backstories. This is why I described how awful Kefka's new world is. Because at this point, you can literally go to Kefka and defeat him to beat the game. Once you get the airship, you can land in Kefka's tower and take him on. Granted, it will be pretty challenging because of how the dungeon is designed, but this is a very similar situation to the merged world from Final Fantasy V, where you find yourself in a new world map, and as soon as you get the airship, all you really need to do is beat Exdeath. But there is so much optional side stuff to do. You gotta find all of your friends, explore the world and find out what Terra, Strago, Cyan, and the gang have been up to. Discover new areas and find new pieces of magicite to unlock new magic abilities and summons. When the world was opened up, Kefka released a whole bunch of super bosses, so track down Fumbaba, kill Doomgaze, and take out the 8 legendary dragons who are causing all kinds of trouble. This is you picking up the pieces, fixing the world that Kefka helped ruin. Unlike FF5, you're still getting new plot stuff. Terra abandoned fighting to protect the orphan children of this one village, and while defending them from a beast, she realizes what's truly important, what matters to her, and what she has to do to make things right. Cyan ultimately comes to grips with his family's death, and Locke, he actually manages to find the Phoenix Magicite, which, like in 5, has the power to bring people back from the dead. But it can't last forever, and Rachel explains that Locke needs to move on with his life, telling him how proud she is and how much she loves him. Heavy stuff, to be sure. But this end scenario, and the ending especially, bring a happier conclusion to this game that the audience desperately needs. It's brilliant, and I love the entire World of Ruin stuff. An open-ended world map with tons of secrets to find and tons of quests to do. Hell, you discover new party members that you never saw before, one of which is a mimic hiding inside of a weird monster on a solitary island, and he's a mimic named... Go-Go? The guy from Final Fantasy V? Well, he did go into a rift portal after you quote-unquote beat him. Maybe he traveled to a different dimension and ended up here. Huh. It turns out Mog the Moogle actually has a Yeti friend named Umaru that lives in the Narsh Caverns. So you can recruit a Berserker Yeti who actually throws his teammates at enemies in battle. What the shit? Oh, by the way, Mog rules in this game because right after you recruit him in the World of Ruin, If you examine the wall he's leaning on, you'll find the Moogle charm, which only he can equip. The best thing about this accessory is that it eliminates random encounters when you wear it. Finally! I've wanted something like this in these games. The encounter rate in 6 alternates between being good or bad, but luckily on the Super Nintendo, at least you enter and leave battles really quickly, which I can't say for my PlayStation Final Fantasy V playthrough. Yeah, I probably should have mentioned that when I described how slow the merged world was to navigate, huh? Ah well. The World of Ruin also features a new Coliseum where you donate items and are given a better one if you win a one-on-one battle in the arena. It's a good way to get some really great equipment, but I really wish the game didn't make it auto-run. Yeah, even though you can set up your parties with whichever characters you want and none are considered the leader like it's Persona or something, in the Coliseum, whatever party member you send in just does whatever they want, ruining the chance of using specific strategies and turning it into a game of luck sometimes. Not a huge fan of that. In 2017, I definitely remembered the legendary dragons being a lot harder. I mean, the last playthrough I did of this game was in 2009, and even after that, I remembered the game being harder? Or maybe I forgot again. Honestly, the only boss that gave me trouble in this game was the Magimaster at the top of Kefka's cult tower, where only magic can be used. Mainly because he nullifies specific magic spells when you use them on him, and his death move is to cast Ultima, the most powerful spell in the game that low-level characters are guaranteed to fall to. But Ultima can work both ways. If you teach everyone in your party that spell, and cast only that during boss fights, you found the win button. It makes quick work of the dragons, it makes quick work of Magimaster, and it obliterates Kefka at the end too. So, if you want an easy victory, Ultima, my friends. Ultima. And the last thing I'll mention is the party switching mechanic. This is actually introduced rather early when you play as the Moogles to protect Terra, but Kefka's tower is designed in such a way that you need to split your party members into 3 groups to reach him. It's why you're encouraged to find more people, because only having Celeste, Edgar, and Setzer can be pretty damn tough. But not impossible. You want a challenge run? Beat the game with only those 3 characters. But you assign party members to different groups, and on the map, you press Y to switch between them, sometimes to navigate dungeons, and other times you're on protection duty, trying to prevent multiple groups of enemies from reaching the target. But it's an interesting mechanic that won't really be revisited too much in the sequels. The benefits of having the biggest playable cast in a Final Fantasy game. And that's not even including Biggs and Wedge, the Returners leader Bannon, one of the ghosts from the Phantom Train, or General Leo, who all get a turn at gameplay at some point. Anywho, I've rambled a lot about this game, haven't I? Eventually, everyone is reunited. They climb Kefka's tower, go face to face with the 3 statues, managing to destroy them once and for all, knowing full well that the possibility exists that by doing this, Espers and magic alike will disappear forever. But even with the statue's destruction, everything's the same. Kefka has absorbed all of the statue's magic, so he's the last thing that needs to be destroyed. They go face to face with him, and ever since becoming a god, Kefka has been having a ball, killing and destroying and reducing everything to rubble. Even after all that's happened, Kefka asks,
And have you found your joy in this nearly dead world of ours?
And yes, they have. They all have a reason to live, a reason to fight, a reason to keep going, that no matter what Kefka does, they will get up and rebuild, and that life has more meaning than he will ever know. And now, it's final boss time. Honestly, Kefka wasn't really that hard at all. You use every single party member that you brought into the tower, so even if he cuts down all 4 of your party members, they'll be replaced by 4 more, and I could handle the guy with my initial party anyway. Still, you gotta love the surreal imagery. Kefka makes you climb a tower of his distorted desires until you ultimately clash with the god himself. Final Fantasy villains, man. They always end up turning into some crazy god monster. With Kefka's death, the tower begins to crumble and magic starts disappearing from this world. All of the magicite begin to shatter, and Terra decides to turn into an Esper one last time to lead the airship out of harm's way. As they escape, Terra's Esper form vanishes, forcing Setzer to make a crazy maneuver with the airship to catch her. And he succeeds. Luckily, Terra's still alive and a full human for the first time. As our heroes fly over the world they just saved, people are celebrating and starting to rebuild what Kefka has destroyed. No matter how dark things get, no matter how hopeless the situation seems, humanity has a way of surviving and moving on. And that, my friends, is a beautiful ending. This was Final Fantasy VI. I still love this game so much. And you know what's great about this thing? There's so many missable things and hidden secrets that I would hear things about this game for years after I initially played it. Did you know Sid can actually survive his sickness? There is a method. You're supposed to move really quickly and only grab the fast fish, as they're the healthy ones that will raise his health. As a kid, I thought it was a guaranteed inevitability that no matter what fish you fed him, he was going to die. Nope! When I was a kid, I lost Shadow to the floating continent and he never appeared again in the world of Ruin. And it wasn't until I talked with kids at school and discovered that you can actually wait for him before you leave. If you wait just as the timer is about to end, Shadow will appear in the nick of time and you can recruit him later. Huh! It was these things that added to Final Fantasy VI's mystique and made it even better to me. I won't lie, it's one of the easier games in the series. I actually think it's easier than 4, especially with all of the freedom and customization you have to break the game in two. But even if I wasn't really challenged, I was still having a blast playing it. The music, incredible. The visuals, amazing. The story, holy shit, I can't believe I'm playing a Super Nintendo game. This is the pinnacle of classic Final Fantasy. This is easily the best RPG you can play on the SNES, and I cannot recommend it enough. Nowadays you can find this easily on the Wii's Virtual Console, PlayStation Network, and the game did have an update on the Game Boy Advance that added new Espers and 2 new dungeons where you could fight a much harder version of the legendary dragons. Oh, and I guess there's an iOS Steam version as well, but again, ugh. So many of my friends who, having played the PlayStation games onwards, still consider this the best game in the series. And it's not hard to see why. This game moved me to tears, and I'm still impressed at what Squaresoft created on such a limited console. It's incredibly fun, it's incredibly moving. You want to get into Final Fantasy? You kinda need to play this. To me, it's more than a video game. It's a piece of art. Well, folks, that's the end of the Super Nintendo trilogy, and now we're moving on to the PlayStation trilogy. And I don't think I need to tell you guys, but if you thought 6 was amazing, the next one redefined RPGs forever. Next time, I look at the big one. The game that caught everyone's attention and one of the greatest video games I have ever played. It's my personal favorite, and it's next. Final Fantasy VII.